Hello and welcome back to Board Crazy. My name is D, and today I'm going to be reviewing Cloud City with
Will.
Yeah.
Who we established in our gameplay video that I resemble a cumulus cloud.
Did we establish that?
Yeah. And then what do we say about you? You're like a Stradivarius or something like that?
A violin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we get talking about this here game, we're going to run my introduction to it from our gameplay video for anyone who hasn't watched that yet, so you have a little understanding of how the game works before we, talk about it in detail.
And if you want to skip it, I'll put a little time there that you can skip to.
That's fine. That's fine too. Here that goes. Cloud City is a game for 2 to 4 players designed by Phil Walker Harding and published by Blue Orange. In this game, players are competing architects who have been tasked with designing a new city with buildings and walkways that reach above the clouds, and the ultimate goal is to earn the most votes from the city council. To set up, first the cloud tiles are all shuffled up and 3 of them are placed face up in a line next to the pile. Then the players each get 1 starting tile and its corresponding buildings, as well as 3 face-down cloud tiles which form their starting hands. The game is played over a number of rounds, during which each player in clockwise order takes a single turn. On a player's turn, they must first play a tile from their hand to their city. The tile may be rotated however they like, but it must connect to at least 1 other tile in their city, and it cannot make the city too wide or too tall. In a standard game, a player's city must be made into a 3x3 square, while in the 2 or 3 player variants, the player's cities must be made into a 3x4 rectangle. After the tile has been placed, then the player must place the proper buildings on it. Each tile has 2 colored spaces where the buildings go, and the different colors correspond to buildings of different heights. After this, they have the option, if able, to build walkways between their buildings. Walkways are how players earn votes, with longer walkways being worth more votes. Each building can support up to 2 walkways, but walkways may not be built over areas without a cloud tile beneath, and walkways of the same height may not cross each other. After this, the final step of each player's turn is to draw a new cloud tile, either from the top of the deck or from the face-up selection next to it. The game ends once all players have built their city models to the proper dimensions. Then players tally up their scores by adding up all their votes from the walkways in their models, and the player who has earned the most votes has won the game. Optionally, players may also choose to play with 1 or 2 special request cards, which can earn or lose players' points for achieving or failing to achieve special goals. Now let's get started. All right, Will, Cloud City. So obviously not a immensely complicated game.
No, it's pretty
Especially to learn.
Basic, yeah.
Very easy to learn. Get into this quick. It doesn't take very long to play. The obvious initial draw of this game is its sort of the visual, 3D nature of it.
Yeah, the verticality
Yeah,
of it.
which we'll talk about a bit more later. But I do want to say that the game might seem like it doesn't have much in the way of strategic depth. Right up front, it might seem kind of like a gimmick. But I do think that the 3D nature of the game actually does enhance the strategy and actually gives it some depth that I maybe wasn't expecting initially.
I think there's a combination of factors that contribute to that effect, whether it be the fact that you have to put your tiles down in the right spot to be able to build the buildings where you want them. But I agree with you. There's at a base level, the verticality makes it so that you have to be constantly aware of what you're doing because things can get hidden behind other buildings, and and then you have the levels. So yeah, there's a lot to keep track of.
Yeah, you need to keep track
as
of
simple as you'd think.
The game both vertically and horizontally. A lot of it comes down to selecting the right tiles and placing them correctly, orienting them correctly. There's not a lot of variety on the tiles. There's only the 3 colors, and they're going to be either diagonal or they're going to be next to each other, where the buildings go. So I think at first, someone's instinct playing this might be to not consider them all that much.
Yeah.
Because they look so similar for the most part. There doesn't seem to be a big difference. But that obviously, as you continue to play that game, you realize the importance of choosing these properly. Because a lot of it, you score points by having walkways, and the longer the walkway, the more points you're going to get. But in order to build longer walkways, particularly in like the lower, like the blue and the green buildings, you need space.
Yes.
Which means you can't have buildings blocking either of the same height or of a taller height. So you need to arrange things in a way that allows you space to stretch out the walkways between buildings.
Yep. Which means you're either going to be taking a tile like this that has the two cloud spaces that you can just build over without, because nothing's going to be built there.
Did you know that was there?
No. Or
okay, yeah, keep going.
You're on a roll. You're going to be building one of these, but this is not the best example. But you're going to make sure that it's a building type, that's shorter than the long. Usually, we found ourselves using the brown, like tall buildings to make the longest runs.
Yeah,
because they're a bit easier. You can just go over top of everything. But yes, sorry, go ahead. And the last thing I was going to say about that was I like then that if you read, I don't know if you read about the tiebreakers in the rule book, but like it definitely emphasizes that the shortest buildings are the most valuable, then the green, and then the tallest, which are the brown. And that makes sense because if you think about it, like if you were to run like a 5 or 8 point walkway between two blues, that's really impressive that you found a way to do that.
Yeah, I honestly, that's a good point. I do kind of, if I do have maybe a criticism, I actually kind of wish that the point values were different. Because it is so much more difficult to have like a 5-space gap between green buildings, and even that much more difficult with blue. That it seems almost slightly imbalanced to me that they would still be worth just 8 points for the longest for each color. Different one, I think.
Okay, that's what you meant. Yeah. I was like, I think 8 is fine for like the brown.
8's fine for the brown, but like I feel like maybe the green should be 9, the blue should be 10, something like that, because it is so much easier to connect long walkways with the brown because they're not going to be blocked by anything but other browns. It feels like there's a sort of an imbalance to me in that respect. Like the browns are more valuable as a result, especially those brown 8s, because there's only 3 of them I think in the game. So you the person who can get those might be at an advantage. So that is a little critique I have, but I still think that the strategy aspect of how it all comes together, I think is really good.
Yeah, even like the base game, the first few rounds, sure, they're not going to be the most compelling. You're just going to be, you have 2-3 tiles. You're not going to have that many connections. They're important because you're going to obviously base your entire city eventually around what you start off with, but. Yes, as the game goes on, and especially in the latter half, you're going to notice that I do have to think a lot more.
Yeah. So the base game, without these,
I was about to draw.
We're going to get to these. The base game is simply playing tiles, buildings, putting walkways between them, and then you get the points at the end.
It feels very blue-orange. Because Blue Orange, they love their tile games. It's right in their wheelhouse.
Yeah, definitely.
It feels... Yeah.
Definitely. It's a little basic, though, I think. It's not unplayable or anything even remotely like that. I think it's fine for your initial, couple playthroughs to sort of understand get an idea of how the strategies kind of work in the game. But yeah, I think the game definitely benefits from having these special request cards that Will is now opening here. The game recommends...
holographic.
The game definitely recommends that you use like 1 or 2 of them as you become more comfortable. And they're little modifiers that, different ways to earn or lose points by achieving different goals. It's probably going to be easier for them.
Yeah, when I was reading through the rule book, it struck me as, I guess, a little odd that these are considered a variant, like a difficult variant. Because to me, when we were playing the base game, I was like, this game needs these. This doesn't feel like a variant. This feels like they designed the game with these in mind, and then they were like, oh, we can just, call it a variant, but it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say that the designer cheated and he wanted to be like, oh, look, I threw a variant in there. But I think the game just really does benefit from these.
Like, that's Phil Walker Harding. He's calling you out.
All right, maybe a little bit.
He's going to fly in from Australia, and he's going to...
This is just, I would say this is the, for me, the definitive way to play. Like if I don't play
Absolutely.
with these extra little objectives, it's not going to be engaging enough for someone my age. However, Blue Orange, one of their strengths is that they make games for younger audiences, and if you have 10, 12-year-old children,
This is 10
the
and
base
up.
rules.
You go younger, I think, even with this game.
Well, I think the problem is dexterity, finger dexterity at that young of an age.
Like an 8-year-old wouldn't have, like, just as long as they don't have to swallow the pieces, I think you're probably fine.
You're probably right.
They probably have better dexterity than you do.
Almost certainly.
Then we can talk now about the actually, like, the word I'm thinking of, tactile nature of the game.
Yeah, sure.
The 3D nature of the game we can talk about now. Now, we haven't had any issues where we've completely destroyed buildings or anything
blocks,
like that. Blocks. But it is. It's a little. I don't know. It can be difficult at times to basically get the walkways in place on the buildings.
Yeah.
I would say that. Well,
for me, it was kind of like playing Operation.
Yeah.
It's it's not quite tucking in. I got to move this building a little bit. I just don't want, and you don't want to touch the ones underneath or on the side to knock them over.
Yeah. And I think this game has it looks cool enough. I'm not gonna call it a gimmick, but it has enough going on beyond just being a solid board game that I think having higher quality components could have worked in this situation. Specifically, it would have been a lot more expensive, but if the buildings and walkways were metal and magnetized, that would have been much easier to get things in place.
Kind of like what they did with Planet. How everything sort of just went right.
Yeah, it was Planet with blue orange, right?
Yeah, it's blue orange.
Yeah, right there. So something similar to that would have been cool. Throwing kind of that kind of money onto this, I think, might have helped it a little bit. And also, I think it would have made it look a bit better too. The game looks cool when everything's assembled, but the actual components, when you break them down, don't have a ton of visual flair.
That's something I was going to say. Is one of my main complaints about this game is I don't like the color palette at all.
It's very earthy.
Yeah, I want to kind of. I guess I can. I'll take a picture.
It's blue green and a tan.
It's like a very muted.
But they are
light
dull.
Green. It's tan or khaki, and then a sky blue that's a darker sky, a cloudy sky. It just doesn't pop.
No.
I think that's one of the things is it has too much of an industrial look, and I think that's what they were going for. And
Absolutely.
But I just still think that a little more vibrancy.
You can
a little bit
see
more pop could really help the game.
The cover art, there's different biomes basically. There's rivers and forests and desert or whatever to match up with the different colors and levels. But yeah, again, that's what I mean. I think just a bit more money, a bit more weightier components, because a big part of the problem is everything's so light. It's very very light, thin. Cardboard. These are all hollow plastic.
Yeah, it's hollow plastic buildings.
Yeah, so everything feels very tenuous when you're trying to assemble.
This game is inherently awkward to play unless you have very calm hands, steady hands, and you're used to going to very tight.
If you have a tremor, this would be difficult.
Yeah, or you're just like me, where I don't have the best vision or depth perception, so everything gets a little tricky. And I realized that they had to figure out. It can't be a game that plays for a long time and gets too sprawling, because you don't want people to ruin their city, 45 minutes into a game, and then it was all for naught, because how do you go back and rebuild it? So you have to make the game short. So to make it short, you need simpler rules, But if your rules are too simple, then it doesn't justify playing a game that can be as frustrating from a tactile dexterity standpoint. So it's kind of this circle of how do we get this and I think they did. I think Phil Walker Harding did a really good job, and Blue Orange, everyone involved. I do think that if this game was any more complicated, it would have been too long, and then you risk, like I said, running the problem of knocking your city over and just wasting 45 minutes, an hour of your life. And so what you were saying about it having slightly better components, more expensive components, and all that, I think I agree with that, because I think my problem is that my main problem with the game is that I'm not sure I would ever pull this out over other games that are sort of similar, just because the verticality of it terrifies me. Because I'm not good at the spacing and the placing of stuff, especially when I have bigger hands. I have to, well, from a chubby standpoint, so it's hard for me to get into these tight spaces to put things down. So, time to do final thoughts, give it some scores, or you have anything else to say?
I mean, I guess it's worth pointing out that this game has very, very little player interaction. If you're not into the sort of multiplayer solitaire sort of game, this is probably not for you. Beyond the usually unintentional stealing of the tile that someone wants, that's kind of as much as you're going to get. So, but yeah, okay. So final scores. I do stars.
I do letter grades.
This is a very, again, we said it before, it's easy to learn, plays pretty quickly. I think it's cleverer than you might expect. Again, it's not the deepest game in the world. Obviously, we have our qualms with the build quality, if you will, of the components. But I do think it's pretty fun. I do think it's a pretty solid introductory or sort of filler game. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5.
Yeah, I think we pretty much agree on this one. I laid out in detail my whole point about like the balance of the awkwardness of building to the weight of the gameplay to the playtime and all that. And I do have some issues there because, I don't need to go back through that. I do think the game looks a little bland, color palette wise. It's not a feast for the eyes or anything. But especially with those extra little goal challenge cards to give you more to do, more to think about. The game really is enjoyable to play. It's never going to be a favorite of mine, but it's not going to be one that I'm just like, I never need to play that again. So it kind of falls in the middle there. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a B-.
Okay, if you enjoyed this video, we hope you did, please give us a thumbs up. You can, of course, leave any comments you have for us on our review, or if you've played this yourself in your own experience. You can subscribe to the channel for more videos every week, and you can, of course, hit that notification bell so you know when those videos come out. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are all linked to in the description below. And come back next time where I think things are going to get magical. It's another popular intellectual property. But until then, thank you for watching. Bye.
See you next time.